Hello, children. Today we're going to review 13 Rules to Not Be a Fucking Cuck by Turd Flinging Monkey. He, among still too few, but a handful of people like Sandman, Terrence Pop are starting to get the idea like, hey, we should all help each other out and do some book reviews and advertise one another channels. And so he wanted me to do, I've paid him to do some book reviews. And he says, hey, if you do a book review of my book, would and I cross promote. Like, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to exchange money and pay taxes on exchange money, or do you want to barter and help everybody out? Just me. So I didn't get a physical book. I got his book is the first book I've ever gotten on Audible. Usually people send me the MP3s, and he did, but I'm like, here's some money. It's very cheap. What is it? Oh, it's not very cheap. It's $14 on Kindle. It's $14. How is it the same price? 14 paperback, 14 Kindle. Anyway, so I will put it in the chat room. There it is. It's also in the description of the video below. Well, maybe it's not going into the chat room. Oh, for God's sake. Do you remember Windows XP when everything fucking worked? All right, never mind. It's not working. So here's the deal with the book. Let me pull it up on my Audible so I can take a look at the chapters here. This is a short book. I don't know. Hang on. How many pages is it in paperback? It's really essay length. 88 pages. Yeah, so this isn't a book. This is an essay. Lengthy essay, but an essay nonetheless. There's nothing wrong with that because I think not everything needs to be a 400-page tome to convey these simple ideas and concepts. That's the number one thing I like about this book is it's concise. It really gets down to brass tacks real quickly. And I would put it in the genre of other red pill books like The Rational Male, but more so in terms of how practical and concise it gets, The Way of Men. And there's not much new being said in it. He does put his own spin on it towards the later chapters, which I'll get to, which I didn't mind, but I'm like, oh, you had to, didn't you? Because it would have been a good standalone book on its own. But it's a diluted, not diluted, I'm sorry. It's an undiluted, purified form of Machiavelli, of Jack Donovan, all the stuff you would read in the red pill community, some of the books, even some of the, if you've read my books, some of the same themes are in this, but that's why I like it again. It's because it's short and sweet. And what I'm finding out is that a lot of people are, here, I even got some books here. Okay, so here's Worthless. This is a short book. This is one of my best-selling books. It took me 2 weeks to write. I just took a seminar I did. And that's one of my best-selling books versus, one that I also wrote and sold it. This one, 400 pages, took me 4 months to write, and it sells about the same. It doesn't need to be long-winded, or I would say those are long-winded, but it doesn't need to be this massive work to convey and achieve what it sets out to do with the reader. And so How Not to Become a Cuck, or 13 Rules to Not Be a Fucking Cuck, does that. And so for someone who's younger, I think it has much more appeal to a younger and larger audience than a more serious, lengthy work because people just don't have the patience. And if you're a young guy, it would work for women too, which is one of the criticisms I have of the book. It's tailored towards men, which I understand. I totally understand why you tailor serious philosophy to men. Women don't want to listen to shit. They want to be lied to. They want fiction. I get it. They want the Hallmark Channel and the investment banker and the cattle baron astronaut fighting over them and her single child or her illegitimate bastard child. I get it. I get it. So I know why he wrote it, but he could still apply this universally to both sexes. But it's digestible. That's the main selling point, is that for someone, you don't, especially if you're younger, you don't have the patience, maybe not even the intellect or the maturity to digest something like The Way of Men or The Rational Male, even Bachelor Pad Economics. It's too much, too serious, too deep, and 13 Rules to Not Be a Fucking Cuck is the sampler. and not even a sampler, because he adequately describes it's just very efficient in explaining of putting yourself first, the real world realities of how most people are here to fuck you over and screw you over, consciously or not. I'll just go to my notes here. Let me pull them up. What the situation on the ground is, how every entity is out, and how society is geared to take advantage of the individual and parasite off of the individual to make you a battery into the matrix. And it's basic, just being unplugged from the matrix is really what it is. And sometimes it's harsh and brutal and direct, where I'm like, whoa, that was a bad. I'm like, oh no, it's 100% true. It's 100% true. And so this is a great introductory book to somebody who is looking to unplug themselves from the matrix. It is that short. It is that concise. It is that sweet. And if you read that, okay, then maybe you go on to thicker, meatier tomes and books like The Way of Men, like The Rational Male. It's a good stepping stone, because a lot of people, you just can't unplug somebody from the matrix. It doesn't. This is a real good introductory book to different thinking. To no, you don't owe society a living. No, no, they ain't your friends. And this is why I think an opportunity that TFM had. Women are lied to more than men. And not by rightists, not by libertarians or capitalists or conservatives or tradition. They are lied to so much by the left, namely academia and their teachers. Oh yeah, go $250,000 into debt for this worthless fucking degree. But then this is the criticism I have of the book, where it's not against women, but it certainly is not written towards an asexual market. It is skewed towards men. It is written towards men. Some of the chapters are only for the benefit of men. And so, whereas there's this whole other half of the market that would have benefited from this book, albeit, and admittedly, I know they would probably never buy it because it's not the lies they want to hear. I got that. But I would have, there's the principles that TFM was writing about are universal to all human beings. People are to screw you over. Most people are fucking morons. You're being lied to. Until you wake up, you are a sheep, and you will continue to be plugged into the matrix and taken advantage of. And that applies, I'd even say more for women than men, especially if you consider the past 10 years that quote unquote the red pill community has done. A lot of guys are waking the F up. It's the women that need to be wake up. So the last couple of chapters, and let me pull them up here so I can refer to them specifically. Understanding sex and love. Think with your big head. I mean, these are obviously dedicated towards men. There's nothing wrong with that either. Live a meaningful life. I really liked how he talked about the painting canvas. I've wrestled with the point and purpose and meaning of life. And he's saying, you're just a canvas. You have to give it meaning. You're the artist that when you die, your painting and legacy moves on later. I thought that was very good. I think it's chapter 1 or 2. Yeah, the last chapter, number 13, that goes back to the general overall arcing premise of the book. But rule 10, 11, and 12, chapter 10, 11, and 12 is dedicated predominantly towards men. Let me pull up the notes here. And where I understand this is he couldn't let it be. He couldn't let it be. He had to introduce the waifus. For any of you who are regular listeners to TFM, you know that he has a sex doll, which throws everything off. And that's why I like listening to him, not because he has a sex doll, but his economic analysis is brilliant. And I disagree with him on pretty much every level. Like, it's a sex doll. This isn't real. What's wrong? What's happening? Which, it's kind of like listening to a Black Panther podcast where it's like, I couldn't disagree with you more, but this is interesting. It's different. He had to skew it towards men because of two main pillars in his personal belief, that of the value of having he calls them waifus, but they're basically just sex dolls, real life sex dolls. And then also his advocacy for getting rid of women's rights. And I don't think he's necessarily advocating getting rid of women's rights as much as the right to vote, but there'd still be protection and all that. Again, two things I disagree with TFM on. And I was like, it was completely unnecessary. It wasn't necessary to this book. The forces that be are already attacking everybody equally, men and women, probably women more, because they're a more receptive audience to lies. That it didn't need the personal touch of TFM, which I understand at the same time, but I can even appreciate. I'm like, yeah, we're going to have to talk about the sex dolls, aren't we? And yeah, we're going to have to talk about getting rid of women's rights. But, and even though it had a logical alignment with the overall arcing of the book, completely not necessary. I've written several, like Curse of the High IQ. A lot of people ask me like, hey, why didn't you talk about the racial gaps of IQ? And I'm like, because it wasn't necessary to the book. It wasn't, it would bring in and overcomplicate. And it, you know, if you got a 140 IQ, whether you're Black, Hispanic, or Asian, you're fucked. You're fucked. And I don't need to detract from the main thesis of this book that if you got a super high IQ, you're fucked, with obfuscating it with, you know, a whole new subtopic of race. And I think that's what TFM did with 13 Rules Not to Become a Fucking Cuck. Is where then he brought in sex dolls, which had, I don't know what that had to do with the main theme. And we got to take women's voting rights, which, by the way, I'm actually surprised Amazon publishes. So bravo to Amazon for publishing something that's obviously a very politically incorrect and unpopular opinion to have. I was kind of shocked, actually. I was like, wow, maybe you can write a book and not have Amazon pull it. You know, I was like, all right, good, Jeff Bezos for the freedom of speech. So that it was also, I wouldn't say jarring, only because I know I've listened to TFM on the internets and listened to his podcast. So it's like, okay, I know the author. I know this is where he's going with it. I see how it lines up, but it wasn't necessary. And I thought the book would have been much more improved. It's the only thing that kept me from giving it a 5-star review, is if you just took that out of it and basically said, look, don't become a cuck, male or female. Those chapters probably would have even been better spent, you know, highlighting how women are duped out of their money and their youth and their beauty to go be a fucking tax-paying, commuting, metered ramp lining up lemming, where it's like, hey, did you want to have a husband and some kids? Well, that would have probably increased, because women are lied to way more than men. That right there, how not to become a cuck for women, that could have increased the size of this book twice. But he chose to focus on a male audience predominantly only, whereas I think there was a great opportunity to leave. But in intellectual honesty, how many women would listen to that? And that's, so maybe TFM is right on that one. Maybe is. Written real well. He narrated it himself. So if you're more of like, was the writing good, and was his recording, if you're into audio books, the syntax and the grammar, and then from a literature sense, yeah, it was very well written, very clean, very concise, very sparse and get to the point. 88 pages. He said a lot in 88 pages. But yeah, it's just I see a different market, and he had different intentions. But I was like, I would have liked it if you, because here's what I love. At any time, especially people on the alternative media, if you're not a leftist, just be honest. Just be honest. Yeah, I want Black people not to be poor anymore. That's why I tell them to stop having kids they can't afford. That's why I tell Black men everyone should get a vasectomy, make some donation at a sperm bank, and then, dude, overnight you solve like 90% of the problem. I just love to see the left fucking argue with me on that. Women, you want to close the wage gap? Stop majoring in stupid shit. And I love to see the left come in and argue with my veracity or my intellectual honesty intentions to help women. Because, yeah, if you stop majoring in stupid shit, you wouldn't have half the problems you have. You wouldn't have 80% of the problems you have right now. I think people on the non-left, because TFM is not a traditional conservative. I think if people just took a more ballsy approach, stop doing drugs, stop having kids you can't afford, and stop majoring in stupid shit. You could apply that to all people, and all people would benefit. But then because the left is so like they got a boner for class warfare and race warfare and gender warfare, you'd be like, what? What do you want them to do? Major in English so they can fucking ruin their. What do you want them to do? Have more kids so they can fuck it up? No, you tell me who's really got the. And I think we just. It's there. It's now. You can present. You could take a bold position like that, and really, you know, not only take a position you can hold, but show other people like, hey, non-leftists aren't your enemy. You might want to think about the assholes telling you about how you've been oppressed all this time as you spit out 7 illegitimate children and you majored in English, if you could, even get to a degree of majoring in English. So I think he could have given a olive branch to women without sounding conciliatory. I think maybe that's one of the reasons. But again, the profit motive. Why write chapters for women if they're not going to listen to it? A horse, water, drink. I get it. The fat diabetes patient, if they're not going to eat their broccoli, I get it. So there you go. All right. More asshole consultant coming along the way. That was just a book review. I put the links down below. We'll see you guys later. Toodles.